For decades we have been busy trying to continue and add to the work of George Lucas. Many have wondered where he got his saga, and how. He left many things open, yet others have assumed wrongly instead of letting you learn yourself. It does not need you to be a fan to understand that his 6 films are very unique and speak to many. Although they do not know why, it has seen many in the human and mind science to try to answer this question. Yet nearly 50 years have passed and the many videos here are all similar, and do not even try to explain the many things we do.
Another part that has come under speculation is the emotions of the Jedi to use their powers. Searching feelings and hide your feelings and become confusing to some. First, a force-sensitive person has what we call now extrasensory perception. This means that other than their body's senses, there is an aura that far outreaches the body's limits. With this one can sense by extension the limits of the body, but when searching out with those feelings on has to bear in mind that their emotions are tied to this, as well as many of the powers they use. So to hide their personal feelings protects them from being attacked by a dark side force. Although already discussed, the dark side of the force is really the abuse of the force. They live out of harmony with cycles, symbiosis and harmony. Their goals are to create chaos, bring suffering, as this is what they feed on. Then to use one's own negative feelings against them is easier than positive feelings. It is the wrong type of feelings, and these feelings can be changed by emotion. When they say search with your feelings, it means with their senses. Then there is the other feel, as in touch, feeling of coldness, which is separate. Then there is the conscious mind and the subconscious, 2 different things, one totally controlled by you, the other is the brain's own workings as it sorts and stores all the data it has picked up through the day, so at night all these senses are sorted. From hearing a conversation while passing a couple walking by, to someone shouting in the street are all stored in the mind and sorted when we sleep. It deletes the useless information such as the passing conversation and keeps the important stuff such as hearing a song you like for the first time in a long storage part of the brain, while other passes, for example that meeting you almost fell asleep in, at work. That gets put in a temporary store, so when the boss comes to you the next day or a week later and asks you if you learned anything from the meeting, your brain will rapidly go through that temp store and may or may not if there come to mind. It is the same when you just can't remember a name. The brain sorts through the files stored, and depending where they are, your mind is rushing to remember that name. This is putting off that little librarian in the mind who is being called while still looking for the file. Every time you rush it, it gets delayed. Then when you're just about give up, it comes to you. Because you gave that librarian time to find it instead of rushing it. People put a lot into dreams, but they are a part of this sorting process. While it's storing files, it's opening these stores which creep into our REM sleep. But they are always distorted or in the wrong setting from your memory. That's because that librarian is moving stuff around in the store to fit in more space. Plus it is put in some kind of order, usually the recent at the front, and the further you go back, it stores long down the line, until it goes completely or is jumbled between real events and other events. There are people though whose brains store all this data differently, people with photographic memories and those with eidetic memories. As their memories are stored back to front, sometimes the older memories are more recognizable than recent memories, or even over recent memories. The brain can handle many things at the same time, but it can become overworked or broken. This can be due to the mental health of the person. Even in a normal person there are times when their feelings are all over the place. This is what is meant by the Jedi when minding your feelings, as they can be used against you. But that doesn't mean it to be emotionless. After a trauma, it is normal that the mind's senses are off, and things can become difficult to understand. This affects the feelings. Such as a death of a family member, each person reacts differently, but it makes no sense to fear, be angry or hate about, because death is a natural thing. That is what Yoda tells Anakin in the last of the prequels. Our brains know that to well, put it as how a person deals with that which makes the difference. For the Western world, funerals are a sad event, but in Africa and other places, they are not. Instead of mourning and being sad, angry etc. when a loved one dies, they celebrate the life of that person together as a family. There will be laughter, singing joyful songs and dancing. For Westerners that seems very strange, but we all know we and our loved ones are going to die one day. It is nature. We shouldn't feel sad, angry about it because our minds already know it's going to happen one day. So the Jedi are saying not to let nature get you down, because as is prone, people act differently when this happens, and as a Jedi, they are taught to learn this and come to peace with it. Death is just one and love is another. Many people say that they are blinded by love. That means different things. For some it means that they didn't realize the person was like that because they were so in love with them. If this leads to finding out that the one you love has been cheating on you or even only with you for your money, the person can be hurt. Then they can go through that process of blame whether themselves for trusting her and not using their feelings to realize that she was like that, or blame her. This is when that person comes consumed by love, and will act out, either trying to win her back even though she is a cheat. Telling the person they still love them and are acting irrationally is letting their feelings of emotion, attachment get to them. These are the feelings that need to be mindful of because they are not normal, they are made from fear of losing, jealousy, and that is what will lead them to have their feelings used against them, especially if they take back the cheating person. They are basically giving into their unnatural feelings, when they should know that really be better off without that person. These are the attachments and feelings which are different because doing one can be the natural way or keeping the attachment is unnatural and best let go. Jedi are allowed to feel they feel compassion, which is greater than love because it isn't a greedy one, where love requires trust and that can be used against you. The Jedi are taught these differences when they are young so as not to get caught with them before their time. Their training is the same as boarding schools and royal families, who from a young age are independent of their parents and are taught about many things that will matter in their life. Young princes were taken around the world to see different cultures so they can understand the differences and not grow up like some with bias against one culture, race, sex, and more. This often leaves them with less parent time because they are being groomed to be a duty to the people. That is the same as the Jedi. They are an order that serves the people for free, and they have codes which, given the powers they have, need to be taught at a young age. It is the same for the X-Men with a school, where they accept people with powers so they are able to control them. No one has asked how the parent feels, but Anakin says it all. She knows he holds a duty and that is why they are prepared to let them have their life. It is a great honor to be given the gift and families understand what it means, so they are allowed to be selfish and keep a child with powers and no knowledge of how to use them properly. That is not responsible parenting. These are the things you seem to miss on your hate video. Though Disney have helped ruin the Jedi name purposely. Many attempts to get this message to you have failed. This is one way we have found of doing that, and to be as simple and to the point as need be. Star Wars is much more than a simple movie, it is the revelation the people in charge didn't want you to know. That is why Disney made it into a disaster. This is why the Star Wars saga has now, finally come to an end, but there is still some revelations. With that said, the Star Wars saga is based on truth, the ancient myths, about the guardians of the world. They are said to be the protectors of peace, and fight injustice. They held a duty to a world that has been lost from history. Just as the saga tells, this happened a long time ago, on a world that seems like galaxies away, from what to once was. Many ancient cultures speak of these guardians and the golden age in which they live peacefully. Their order was overturned by a traitor, who was seduced by the Dark Lords, who wanted to control the world. The guardians are known by many names, from the Magi, the Stable Ones, the Watchers, Skywalkers, and, even in ancient Egypt, as the Jedi. Their fall would change the future of the world. The Dark Lords quickly took their place, as the coming cataclysm was about to erase most of this, once advanced people, off the face of the world. The Order sought refuge in an old sunken citadel in Egypt. They were erased from history. The Dark Lords had power, now they needed control, as they always have. To keep control of the people that would survive the cataclysm. The once technologically advanced people would seek refuge in the many underground cave-like cities. The people lost their technology and were forced to begin again. But they carried the stories that would become the myths of many ancient cultures. The Golden Age would be remembered, but it was over. The regime adopted by the Dark Lords would see to it that the Golden Age would become a myth. Using the old heroes and turning them into divine beings, they could finally create a new world which they would rule. This said about their control of the people. They distorted the past and its history. They created a regime would split and created groups of people who did the same things, told what to eat, sleep, and more. These are like clones, they rewrite history in what is called religion. The three religions are those clones controlled by one master or lord, who seeks praise for the world they distorted into an unbalanced world. They controlled everything that humans find naturally. They even stopped their wonder and to investigate the world. All that was told by the holy houses that conquered lands and converted more people to their ways. Though their real goal would be to war against the other holy clones in a never-ending war over the souls of mankind. This still continues today in the same places they always have. None have learned their mistakes or lessons, and none have found a way to free themselves from the brainwashing that lives in every church, mosque, and temple. But the Dark Lords thought they had killed off these guardians, but they have been in hiding and watching for a time to re-enter the world and return balance to it. First, they needed to create a path for their story to be retold to the people and remind them and earn their trust. For people with powers have been wrongly seen as demons due to the church and its rivals. They don't see that magic is a science not yet discovered. Secondly, they had to find and protect others who were like them but were left to the religious world, leaving them in hospitals and on drugs to mask their gift. In 1908 the Grand Master proclaimed the time was right to return to the world and sent a few knights away to find a way of changing the minds of many generations. They found Atlas Comics, where they used their powers to create a whole new genre of hero, the superhero. Now that people could see a man could have powers and do good, and millions joined the comic book hero. The X-Men that remains the closest to this order were also created when the name became Marvel Comics. The X-Men brought a reason for their powers as they fought their world who called them mutants, but on closer expectation, it was as natural as any other. They were the first of the newly named X-Gene, who had that same duty to the people. The superhero genre was the first step to finding a way to tell the people their story and warn them of the religious disease that promotes love but portrays evil. Without their version of evil is an entity, not a choice, they managed to scare generations with the demonic tales of hell eternal. Science was also finding more and more mysteries from the past, which they could and still cannot explain. When one of the knights came across the perfect person with so much compassion and imagination that was far-reaching, they knew they had their man and way of portraying that story and include it as a subtle message in the films George Lucas was about to make. Many do not see the messages, but there are them that have and become valuable to the rebellion to bring the world back into balance. In 1977 the Star Wars shocked a whole generation and built a massive fan base, which was exactly how it was expected. Those people do not realize why the films speak to them, and that's because of its truth and origins that speaks to all in a primal language. Although there had to be a way of finding those that were willing to fight for what is right, so the lightsaber, which was meant to be the standard weapon of stormtroopers alike, became known with the still mystical Jedi, which portrayed the real guardians hidden in the world. Many took the red herring and copied themselves to the Jedi just because of the lightsaber, but do not see for what they stand and their ideals. The story started exactly in the right place, and that is where we are today in the 6-film saga. The prequels had already happened and the Clone Wars were still continuing, only the fall of these Jedi marked the change of an era. Within 20 years the Star Wars Jedi would become a myth in the films themselves. That's all the three heroes knew of the Jedi was yet to come. But still the prequels the most important part of the saga that shows how the Emperor became the ruler of the galaxy. His actions with the gathering of the basic needs of the people would be a precursor of what would be seen in the real world. The control of the banks, trade, and the media, to name a few, would be seen throughout our world and still is ongoing. The more the church loses its flocks, the more they need a new regime to control the people. What better way than controlling their money, their goods, and food, and tell the people the scare stories as the Bible once did, in the monopoly of the media. With so few that own all the world's wealth, they can do what they like without anyone questioning them. Even the same governments who are supposed to help their people are powerless in most matters or are involved with the distractions of the ongoing wars. The sequels would be the most dangerous to portray because it calls out to close those who are in power. That is why in 2012 they took ownership of the saga and tried to change that message. Now you have seen the results, the saga is over, all that you needed to know was in the first 6 films. There are people who are fighting that rebellion alongside the real Jedi that created the Star Wars Saga. Whatever name you call us, we are the same. We hold a duty to all living things. There are many uncertainties left in the world that defy science. Mysteries that have no answers. For those who think the world is alright, I am afraid this is not for you, but for those who see the billions owned by just one man and then see the suffering in the third world, where clean water is hard to come by. For those that pay fuel bills, there has never been the need to, as the world is full of energy which is free and wireless. But they will not tell you that while you are spending thousands on gas and petrol. Even the Egyptians knew of the Earth's natural energy, but that is not for you, because they want you spending your hard-earned money on it and all the other brands that are no different from their cheaper rivals. Banks would not be able to give everyone their money if everyone wanted to withdraw their money out at the same time. Just like the tales of gods and demons, these are new ways to control the people. They want your praise, your blood, sweat, and tears just as they always have. They like playing God in places like the Vatican, where if anything a real Antichrist lives. The real Christ is a weapon to use to control the faithful. Prayers go unanswered as they always have. In fact, God in the Bible has only shown and spoke to a few people on different occasions, but we are to believe that a person has no other motives? Why would a God leave the mess of religion in chaos, then have it set in stone for no one to argue over? Those who persist in it are deluded and unaware that they alone control their own destiny, no one else. Why does some God get to judge, and by what standards can he? The religious have very rarely read the whole Bible front to back, only what they are told to read by their vicars who hold mastery over them. It is no coincidence that people call him Lord, as mankind is supposed to be the sheep in which have to be handled by the master's dogs. Those who praise him do not know why they have to. If a being so powerful can create a world in 7 days, what would he need from man? The need to use intuition and feelings too has been able to be less strictly followed. It is up to the person to decide if they are able to put their duties first, as the choice remains theirs if they show a certain focus on the protection, defense, and putting others first. Focus is key to the role of their duty, especially for trainees. The student's age is no longer an issue of immediate teaching as long as they show willingness and wisdom to be able to understand that the world is full of bias, divisions, and labels to realize the importance of their growth. An older student can still train and be able to carry out their duty without the need for isolation. Apart from the usual ways that are known throughout the sects, the issue of complete strict adherence is no longer needed. A new way will be formed as and when the need arises. As the world's trials are tough enough to add extra actions of ancient restrictions and totality. A person's strength to maintain the role is as important as the strict guidelines that failed in the past. Only when the old laws and codes are acknowledged is there any need to act rash on fixing smaller details for the sake of filling a rule book. The restrictions were a main reason to why the rules were broken, and see no need to further include such ancient shackles in a new world. As long as all know their duties, roles, and talents, the strict adherence to better ourselves and reform is what is required. Each person knows too well what is asked of them, and need not a rule book of numbered actions. Plus the separation of sects have adhered well to last underground for long enough to understand the reasons behind them and their role. The main role has never changed, and that focus and understanding of that basic principle is well known beyond the order, so expecting members not to understand it is a feat. The books still exist and the libraries are still used for learning, and every teacher has done more than required of them. With the roles and duties understood, then the order of reforming its ranks and assigning roles is more important. Last generations have grown within the confines of the citadel and not enough experiencing the life outside.